I go where I am known. I go where I'm not an illusion. Where I go, I've noticed. Everybody goes there. Everybody goes there.
Hello and good evening, everyone. Welcome to Around Town. My name is Carla Berlin, Minnesota's lifestyle and business experts. We've been featuring the best kept secrets, businesses, organization, and people since 2003. We are the Twin Cities' longest airing television community showcase. And tonight, my very special guest is a well known former Twin Cities reporter who worked in this market for 15 years. She's here to talk about Stand By, her newly released memoir, a story rooted in resilience, reinvention, and the power of second chances. Please welcome Beth McDonough. Did I say that right?
Yeah, you did. Great job.
Good.
And hi, everyone.
Y'all, thank you for being here. You are now in Utah, correct?
I am. Don't hate me. I moved here a few years ago. I thought, I've chased enough sirens in the cities that I'm going to come get a little bit of stillness in the desert.
Good for you. Well, we are so grateful that you're here. And for those who may not recognize you, would you please share just a little bit about your history and background? Because we go all over the country. I want to make sure those who aren't in the Twin Cities learn a little bit about you.
Sure. So I was born in LA, grew up in LA, and then my family moved to Oklahoma when I was in junior high, which was a culture shock for me. But it was also a great place to grow up. And so I went to high school and college there, and then I got into TV news. And you know what happens then? You start if you want to climb the ladder, you move a lot, right? Mm-hmm. And I think I've moved a total of 13 times across the US now. And so I had the great joy and benefit of starting as a little bitty cub reporter in Joplin, Missouri, and where I made some wonderful friends and experiences. And then you kind of work your way up. And I worked in Lubbock, Texas. I worked in Tyler, Texas. I worked for a number of years in Houston at KPRC. And then from Houston, I went to Philadelphia, where I worked for KYW for a number of years, which is the CBS ONO. And then I jumped across the street and worked for WCAU, which is the NBC ONO. And during that time is when 9/11 happened. So then WCAU loaned me up to New York for a little bit to help cover that. So I spent some time there, and then came back to Philly. And then after Philly, I made the wonderful decision to move to Minnesota. And let me say, Fox 9 KMSP offered me a job, and I was so thrilled because I had never been to Minnesota. Oh. I've been all over the US, but when I got there and my future boss was giving me a tour, I'm like, oh, I could live here. This is
good.
It's nice. It's clean. The people are smart. It's cultural. There are good restaurants. And at that time, there was relatively low crime. So I worked at Fox 9 for a number of years. Where I got fired, which was self-inflicted. I did a couple of things that put them in a very bad position that we'll go into. And then a number of years later, after I got out of TV, and I started a doggy daycare because I needed to eat. The day I sold my doggy daycare, in the craziest of coincidences, KSTP called me. Not knowing I was selling the doggy daycare, but called me out of the blue and said, we've got an investigative producer job for you. It's not on camera. It's behind the scenes. You'll kind of shape the stories. Would you be interested in that? And I was like, the skies opened up. And yes, of course I would be interested. News is my first love. Mm-hmm. And so I worked there for, 9 years. And had just a wonderful run there as well. And then there were a number of things kind of at the end of my tenure, which nobody could have foreseen. When I was covering the Jayme Closs kidnapping in Barron County and the murder of her parents, I was bitten by a tick during some of the searches, and I got Lyme disease. and which is just a horrendous thing. And the infection went to my brain and my lungs. And what people don't know about that little period was I almost couldn't talk for a while. And I lost hearing in my right ear. And I would try to sit down and write a story that day. And, just hours would pass and I couldn't get anything on paper. So that happened. And I went out on a medical leave. My station was very supportive and to really do everything I could to get my health back. And as soon as I got my health reasonably back on track, George Floyd happened. And I just come back. And while covering the riots and the demonstrations, I got shot in the hip. A lot of people don't know that because we kept it very quiet.
Wow.
And then, so I recovered from that and came back to work still with, if anyone who's watching this has Lyme disease, you understand just the fatigue and the awfulness and the nausea is just something you can't control, which is hard when you're on live TV. But,
Right.
and we were all 12 hours on, 12 hours off, no days off till further notice. And I kind of powered through till the July of 2020. And I was covering just another random demonstration. And one of the demonstrators pointed a gun at my head and he said, "Your media, you're next." And that was just, I'm like, I got to take a break. 30
Wow.
years of doing this. And, this is not how I want my life to end.
Right.
And I was already struggling with this invisible disease that a lot of people didn't know I had at the time. My work did. And so that's when I really decided to step away and focus on my healing full time with the support of Channel 5. And then my health just really went downhill. There was no coming back. So, it was at the end of 2020, we kind of called it quits. Like, I can't continue like this.
I remember posts, and of course, those who wouldn't have known about what we're going to talk about here in your memoir, the public collapse, if you will. I remember, though, the
Yes.
Lyme disease and how much that was impacting you in some of your posts on social media. And so I knew your health was being impacted tremendously. But we didn't know about the other.
No, and over time, some of those things slip out of our memory or fade into the background. But the reason that I was no longer working at Fox 9 is because I was fired, and rightly so. And let me just say right off the top that Fox 9 did for me what I couldn't do for myself, because I could not stop drinking on my own. And so I have nothing but great respect and gratitude towards what happened. And kind of how that transpired was the first DUI I got was in 2007. And it was not long after the bridge collapse, 35W bridge collapse into the Mississippi River. And, I got in a little bit of trouble, Carla. There was a mugshot, that floated around and, you can't even
in the promo at the beginning of the show.
Yeah. And you saw it there, and there's part of it there behind me as well, on my wall. And I keep that up there as a reminder of, hey, you don't want to look like that again. That wasn't fun the first or second time. And that's the point, right? And so I got in a little bit of trouble. I was certainly suspended, and I got a pretty good tongue lashing, rightly so. And my boss said, we don't know if we can even keep you because you have a morality clause in your contract, in which I violated. And he said, and Fox News has a zero tolerance policy. And he said, so we'll try, but, I wouldn't hold out hope. And he said, it's a real shame because you helped to put us on the map. And that was like just a knife to my heart. But, I did it to them. They didn't do it to me. And so somehow we managed to salvage my job, which I'm grateful for. And sometimes I wonder if, that was a good thing or a bad thing. But, and my boss asked me, do you have a problem? We will send you to treatment. We'll get you all the help you need. Like, Team Beth, we are going to, support you.
Yep.
And alcoholism being what it is, and stigma and shame, and nobody wants to grow up to be an alcoholic, and, no one's going to think that's fun. And I just I couldn't own it then. I was in my head. And, we get to be strong people in TV news because we
Yes.
see a lot and we kind of go up against the world sometimes. And I thought, I'm strong enough. I'm going to overcome. I'm going to buckle down. I'm not going to drink anymore. I'm going to walk the line because I truly loved my job where I worked in my career more than anything. And so I apologized to the newsroom, and then we kind of all put it behind us. And I was able to abstain for a while, but it's this disease that gets in your bones and your brain, and slowly over time, I went to go MC a charity event, and we happened to raise a lot of money, and it was exciting and thrilling. And I, in my head, I was like, oh, hallelujah, like in my head, I'm kind of back. We're kind of back.
See a
Like,
lot. Yes. So
life is normal now. Okay. And I celebrated with a glass of wine, Carla. Just, and, it was okay at night, but over time, another drink or two would creep into my life. And I always drank after the news. And I worked the night shift, so 11 or midnight. And so that's what I would do, is go home and, after absorbing the trauma I saw every day, at some point it becomes subconscious and it's in your bones. And
Right.
over time, my drinking definitely increased. And during all of that time as well, in the span of 1 month, my mother died, my marriage ended, my dog died, and I knew my job back in Philly, wasn't being renewed because Comcast was buying NBC. So they were just getting rid of everyone. So all of this happened at a very, very truncated amount of time.
It all hits at once.
It does, which is not an excuse. It's just, hey, these were the stressors in my life at the time, and I picked a really bad way. Triggers. I picked a really bad way to deal with it, and to numb myself from the pain. And so fast forward then to 2008, my drinking definitely started to increase, and it got to the point, I'm embarrassed to say this, but I'm just owning my truth, and I want everything out there because I want people to understand some of this is going to resonate with them and that you can bounce back. So sometimes driving to the TV station for my shift, I would go to different liquor stores.
Oh, wow.
So they wouldn't be like, oh yeah, Blondie over there has been here 3 times this week. Or, I just didn't want the gossip mill. So I would start to go to different liquor stores on occasion. And some people doctor shopped and I liquor store shopped. So no one would kind of pick up on it. I didn't drink around people at work, but I would when I got home or on the weekends. And then it increased and it increased to a point that I knew I was getting in trouble, and I was playing with fire. And then Halloween night of all things, I went out with some coworkers, because what do you do after the news? You go blow off some steam and decompress, kind of in the hopes that maybe you don't bring home what you saw.
Right.
And I remember thinking, Beth, if you get to 3 drinks, you've got to get up and leave here. Like, you cannot handle this. And I could feel myself getting inebriated. And so I went up to the bar to tab out, and I said, how many drinks have I had? And she said, 5. And I was like, oh, this is not good. This is not good. Why I didn't take a cab or an Uber home. That's alcoholism. It's stinking thinking. You want to get home to safety, and all you do is cause a risk every mile that you drive. I got in my car, and I was driving on 394 West going home. I lived just in a next suburb in Minnetonka and Hopkins. And I hit someone on the highway at 80 miles an hour. He wasn't hurt, thank goodness. His car was damaged. And when I pulled up to my house, the police were waiting for me there. And I don't remember a lot of the arrest because I was a blackout drinker. So I've pieced a lot of this together through my attorney and through police reports, which are, heartbreaking and gut-wrenching to read about yourself. And I woke up, and this is how my book begins, because it's not a soft start. I take people right in with me, and you get to feel it all, the handcuffs, the cold jail cell, the cot on the ground, and all the women in the drunk tank around me. and I had blacked out. When I was coming to, the women in the drunk tank were watching a big screen TV of the anchors talking about a train wreck that had happened and spilled some acid. And I covered that train wreck the day before. And so just for me, it was a moment of, and I'm like, well, isn't this an analogy? My life is a train wreck. And right, the next story then was me. My mugshot popped up, and both my mugshots popped up, and the anchors, were talking about what happened, doing their jobs, which is the exact same thing I would have done in their position. And, I'm waking up in this orange jumpsuit, listening to these women talking about me and seeing my mugshot up there. And I just knew that my life, as I had enjoyed it, was now over. I knew. And the women, had asked me, hey, what are you in here for? You don't look familiar. And I'm like, oh, thank God. And I said, well, I pointed at the TV, and they were like, that's you. And I said, oh, that would be me. And they're like, you going to be okay? And I said, no, I will not be okay. I was warned the first time, and no, I won't be okay. So by the time a deputy came to release me, because my attorney did make me stay there the entire weekend. He wouldn't bail me out because I didn't learn my lesson the first time.
Oh,
I mean, the lessons are just stacked up, Carla.
oh, wow.
And so a female deputy came to get me. And when she was walking me back in the elevator and the doors closed, and she goes, how you feeling? And I'm like, how bad is it out there? And she goes, oh, the newsies they're out there. And I'm like, okay, is there any chance you're going to let me go out another door? And she goes, no, just like that. Okay. And she goes, and I walked you out the first time too. And I was like, I bet you have a problem. And so by the time I'm walking out, my attorney called, and he parked about 10 blocks away from the Hennepin County Jail. And keep in mind, this is November 8th. So it was October, so early November. I apologize. So it's cold. There may have been snow on the ground. I don't think there was, but I shivered anyway, let me tell you.
Oh,
I had to make the walk of shame, which my attorney did on purpose, and all the media was out there. And this was hard too. Even some like national gossip shows, they were there, and here I am doing the best I can to get 10 blocks to my attorney. And then I got in the car with him, and he was like, what are we going to do? And I'm like, you tell me, I've got to mitigate the damage here. And I mean, oh boy, did his face turn red. And he said, mitigate the damage. Beth, this is serious stuff. Do you realize how much trouble in? And he goes, you've got a real problem. Do you know that? Wow. And I'm like, do you think it'll help? I'll go to treatment, I'll whatever. And he was like, no, we're not doing any of that. You have a problem. You're going to go to treatment. You're going to stop drinking. And he said, the prosecutor had already kind of reached out to him early on to say she was going to make an example out of me.
Oh, of course.
So I knew that. And right, I was a crime reporter. It's hard to be a crime reporter when you commit a crime.
Right.
And, I could see why I would be a good example to other people, perhaps, of a cautionary tale. And so by the time I went back to the TV station, I got the call from the bosses, and this is all of it's embarrassing and humiliating. They said, come to the TV station, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, I can't really get there because my license has been taken away. And my car was seized and sold. It was being sold at auction, which if you get more than one DUI in Minnesota in 10 years, that's the law.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I didn't either. I found out the really hard way. You want to know something? This is just a human side note too. I had paid my car off 2 weeks before that.
Of course. Oh, wow.
Just paid it off. And I'm like, someone else will enjoy it. And, I asked any chance I'll get my car back. And they were like, like, stupid question.
What a
so the bosses
learned lessons.
Yeah, the lessons brought their friends,
right? And then their kids and grandchildren too.
All of them.
Yeah.
So the station sent me a taxi, which is just embarrassing too. And so I get to the station, and I could tell, some people in the newsroom didn't want to make eye contact. Um, I brought a bad light on them too, and they were severely disappointed and angry, very angry with me, rightly so.
Well, a
This
lot of
is
people
very
don't understand the disease and they think that you can just quit. They don't, and some people can. I know of two people that were in recovery that did just quit, but very few can without help.
Very few. It's just, it gets in your bones and the cravings, and it's all you think about because you don't want to drink, but that's all you think about is drinking because you don't want to
Mhm.
drink. And I'll speak to this in a little bit. My
Right.
stepdad was he had a very difficult time. He saw alcoholism as a
Oh,
character fault rather. And in fact, he passed away with us very estranged. And we were extremely close my entire life. I would say he and my mom and I were best friends. And my mom
mhm.
had passed away. It was left on him, and he just could not handle it. And the disappointment was too gut wrenching for him.
Oh, I'm
Um,
sorry. Yep.
Thank you. And something that I learned in treatment, because then I went from there to treatment. But first, I should tell you that my boss at the time, who I really, really respected and admired, he came in and he was just looking at me like, when you disappoint your father.
Yeah,
And
you
I
get the
knew I was
look.
about to do that, but now I'm disappointing the boss too, and the newsroom's disappointed. And I'm like, "Ugh." And boy, he came in and he was smoking hot. But smoke was coming out of his ears, and he said, Beth, I've never had to deal with this before. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. And he said, we told you last year that was your one warning. There's no way that we can keep you. And he said, you had a job for life here, and
Oh,
you are no longer of use to us. And I mentioned that because that's what got my attention. And I caved inside, and I took my licks. And he said, I hope you get the help that you needed. And I'm like, I will do my best to make you proud going forward. And so I left there. I went to treatment in Center City, Hazleton, Betty Ford. And
oh, very good program.
one of the best things I could have ever done in my life. Very good program. And they teach you the medical hows and whys. If maybe some people are hardwired to be alcoholics, and it turns out, hello,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
you learn all of that. Plus, when you see, and I was in the women's section, when you hear and see all these people, and you're in group therapy every day, and you also do individual therapy every day, and you hear their stories. And if you've ever wondered if you're an alcoholic, you get your answer there. You're like, oh,
Mhm.
I definitely an alcoholic and I cannot drink. And so I was there for 30 days, did the inpatient, and something that my therapist said kind of towards the end, because I had reached out trying to make amends to my father and reestablish some contact, and his heart was too broken. He couldn't, and I don't besmirch him for that. As I've
Mhm.
learned, the people we hurt are allowed to be hurt, and
Yes, yes,
we can always make it right, make it up to them. And
right.
my therapist said, and she'd been this world-class ballerina in Russia. And she was like, what do you think I drank? And I'm like, oh, vodka. Because I would drink wine and beer and maybe a cocktail. But anyway, she said, your father's rejection of you is what will keep you sober.
Oh, wow.
And at the
Great
time,
point.
I just thought that was the meanest thing she could say to me.
Right.
And but also, I'm a reporter, and we're smart women. I processed it, and I was like, she's right.
Yep.
Knowing that I broke my dad's heart, broke my heart.
Mhm.
And so I was going to do everything I could to try and earn his trust back, but to earn my personal credibility back too.
And value. I mean, what your boss said about you're no value to us anymore, or those with what yeah, I mean,
You're
that's
of no use to us anymore.
no use. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And a person did write on here that, that was an ignorant comment, but, at the same time, it they were angry with you. And
Very angry. And
mhm,
I understand the statement. I do. I haven't
mhm,
questioned it once. I understand it. I caused a lot of damage to him and to the station. And
mhm.
so, I have to take my lumps.
Right. Well, and Rusty at Gatenby wrote, "So happy to see her looking so great, happy, healthy, and strong." Thank you for the kind comments, Rusty. We all need that good support system.
Hi, Rusty. Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate that. And Rusty also, he kind of knows the media landscape, right? So thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes,
And something that I'll mention to you, because I didn't know this going into treatment. And my mom and dad did not, stepdad, and he was wonderful. They didn't drink at all. And they always begged you not to drink, don't drink. Nothing good comes from it, da, 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 da. My grandparents weren't around. I knew that they had died when I was young. Well, as you start kind of excavating your family history, it turns out both my grandmother and grandfather died of alcoholism.
oh,
My
wow.
biological father, who abandoned us when I was 2, he had substance abuse issues and also severe, severe mental health issues.
Interesting.
And yeah, and I've never talked to him or seen him since. He left us in the middle of the night, and that was that, to go, live his life. And then I had a sister who died from a drug overdose.
Oh,
And it's interesting because she and I were never close. And they're older. She was older. As I was
mhm.
kind of growing up, she'd run away from home early and, lived on the streets, and which was just so shocking, because if you knew my mom and dad, which were just like quintessential mom and dad, good people, I had a
All
good
American.
childhood.
So
All
did I.
American.
You probably
Yeah.
saw posts with my parents that are now my late parents. They both have passed away. Same thing. They were my best friends. They were the best. And my brother said that the other day too, a couple weeks ago, and he stopped by and he said the same thing, that, so it's hard to understand um, what causes certain siblings to go down different paths.
Right. And at that time, and she was in so much extreme trouble, violent trouble, that sort of thing. My parents tried to no end. And, being much younger, I would watch that and I'm like, there's no way I want to do what she does. I used to think I'm going to do the exact opposite. And for a long time, my life turned out pretty well. you
The
know,
disease kind of crept up on you, and that's what it is. It's a disease like cancer. It progresses, and people don't realize that. One thing you had mentioned to me offline that I wanted to ask you, kind of the why, is why are women more susceptible to the effects of alcohol than men? Because I didn't know that till you shared that with me.
I didn't either until I went to treatment, and they really sit you down and give you the medical breakdown of how alcohol affects women and men, da da da. And
Mhm.
when I would go out with coworkers or friends, they would always say I would have one glass of wine and it's like 0 to 100.
Oh, that's how I
I
am.
became the Energizer Bunny and the Road Runner, and I was off to the races. And they were like, how? We had the same thing. So I learned the medical why, in addition to being genetically hardwired, which I learned while I was in treatment, to be an alcoholic. Well, women, we are 30% more susceptible to the inebriating effects of alcohol for a couple of really big reasons. One of them is we have more fat on our bodies than men,
Mm.
and men have more water on their bodies. Well, alcohol dissolves in water, so we have less of it. And so that means our alcohol doesn't dissolve as quickly in our bodies as it does in a man's. And we also have less of an enzyme, and it's a long word, dehydrogenase or something like that. I know I'm mispronouncing it. Don't email me, people. But it's an enzyme that we have less amounts of in our body as women. And so just because of that as well, that we will always suffer more intoxicating effects of alcohol than men. And
Ah,
that's why you can go out and see a couple having dinner, and she'll have the same amount of drinks as her partner, and he won't be affected. And she, might be stumbling and all of
Yes.
that. Well, there are reasons for that.
Interesting, because I've always been like that since high school. And I, of course, was right when the the age changed from 18 to 21. But I was that person, and I still am today. One, and I'm drunk. I
Yeah.
can't drive. And, in fact, my nickname was Party Carla because, I was one and it was like, yay. But so I have to be very careful. And I'm
Yes.
usually with people, and thank goodness I surround myself with people that either don't drink or that would drive, have a designated driver. I just make
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. For the very reason of what we're talking about. Let's talk about some of the shame and stigma that's labeled with anything, but like in your words, you've called yourself an alcoholic, but what you went
Yeah.
through, and I know, we know mental health. We always talk about the shame and that, but people forget that it's okay to say I'm an alcoholic and it's a disease. Let's talk about that.
Yes, shame is a powerful thing, Carla. When I was offered help, resisted it because I just didn't want to be known as an alcoholic, because you're
Right.
afraid if people
The
know your
label.
dirty little secret labeled, yeah, if people know your dirty little secret that you're going to lose everything, you're going to lose your job and respect and credibility. Guess what? You're going to lose it anyway. Because alcoholism is progressive and it's an equal opportunity disease. And so the shame really held me back. And it's interesting as a reporter, it's one thing to cover shame. It's another thing to be shame. And that really, that held me back from getting the help that I need. And not just me, since we're kind of talking medical stats, if you will,
Mhm.
the Surgeon General, and I also learned this while I was in treatment, has reported that 90% of the people that need help don't get it, that have substance abuse issues. Why? Well, because of shame and stigma, and you don't want to go to your boss and like, hey, I'm the trouble child over here, and cause problems. And so most of the time, people can't make it all the way through living recovery because they fall back into the arms of the devil that brought them there. And I have a little bit of a rebellious nature, and I
Mhm.
also have a lot of persistence, which was great as a reporter, right? And I'm not a very good quitter, and that's good professionally. It's not so good personally when it comes to
Right.
drinking. And the shame just built up and built up, and it finally, it reached a point of my firing that I couldn't overcome it, and that is just something that you struggle with, and I struggle with. I don't anymore. I've reached a point now where I'm grounded enough in my sobriety and I've had enough time. But the shame and the stigma, because of that, only 10% of the 90% that need help go get it.
Right.
So I'd like to encourage people to become part of the 10 percenters. Let's make it 11 and 12. Let's grow this to 50%. Let's get 50% over on this side and keep increasing that number, because recovery, and this is super important, it's not magic. It's not just for one set of people.
Mhm.
Recovery is for everybody if you put in the work. And if
Mm.
you don't put in the work, well then, that's a different story. But if you put in the work, you commit to it, you get support, you get help. I'm a firm believer of inpatient treatment. I think outpatient, because it's very intensive. The experts in this field, they're getting up in your business,
Mhm.
and you're doing, a lot of excavating of your brain and your heart and your life. And so
Well,
I'm a
and
big proponent.
Hazelden, I've been told, has one of the highest success rates of people who stay in recovery. I was told it's almost as high as 25%. Is that correct?
Wow. I would hope so. Let me say
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
I don't know the number.
I don't either.
So I don't want to speak. Yeah. So I don't want to speak for Hazelton, but I could see, I'm one of their success stories, and in effect, I'm going to speak there next month. And I would love for other people to be a success story too. So that's why I'm out here just telling you all my
Right.
ugly business, so people can go, you know what? I've done all this yucky stuff in life and to people, and I've really mucked it up, but I've turned it around. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not immediate. And it's truly one step in front of the other, but you can.
Well, we watched the collapse publicly, or many people did, but you have reinvented yourself. You have been able to do some pretty fabulous things. And that was important to me to be able to bring you on. And I'd love for you to talk about that part of it now, too, publicly, because
Oh,
there's
oh,
yeah, of what you went through. We watched the collapse, but now, I mean, look at you. Like Rusty said, you look amazing, healthy, strong, happy. You have that sparkle in your eye.
oh, thank you. Boy, yeah, it was a long journey back. And I emphasize in the book, and I will here, I don't sugarcoat it, because I take people behind the scenes with me as I'm, still in handcuffs, in the orange jumpsuit, going through the motions, going through the court hearings, and in the public exile. And, I tried to get a job at the grocery store and at the mall, couldn't. I mean, it was so damaged goods.
Oh,
And so and the man I hit sued me. My attorney's fees were exorbitant. My fines by the state were twice as much because I had 2 DUIs now. So I knew I was losing everything. I tried to sell my house, but it didn't sell in time. So it got foreclosed, and because all of my savings and everything have been used to pay all the penalties and the fines and the lawsuits. And, I scraped together what I could to kind of keep something to live on. And I thought, well, I don't have a driver's license. I don't have a car. Nobody will hire me. There's not a bus route around me. And I lived right off of Hopkins Crossroad and 394.
hmm
What I did know is that there was a church about a mile away that I could walk to, that every day at noon they had a meeting, an AA meeting. And whatever people's feelings are on that, AA worked for me. So I try to reinforce what worked for me, and different things work for different people. But between treatment, and I did aftercare for 6 months, I also took on a sober roommate that I had met in treatment, which was one of the best things in the world I could have ever done. Everybody told us not to do it. And because they were like, 2 fresh drunks together, this is just going to go south. And it was one of the best decisions I ever made. She was very instrumental in my sobriety, and we supported each other. And so I would walk in the Minnesota snow, because I only had my feet or a bike. Well, there's snow and ice on the ground by this time. It's December. And by the time I got out of treatment. And so, I just put on my big puffy coat, my astronaut hats, the gloves, the boots, the whole thing. And every day at noon, I'd hoof it to that meeting. And the people in those rooms just saved my life, because you walk in and you hear these other people talk and you're like, I want that. I could have never imagined. I remember someone said one time he had 17 years, and I was like, how? Like, I can't even get through 24 hours. And, and we're pretty smart, determined, persistent people. Doesn't matter. It's a drug, and it's stronger than you are. And so I did that every day for a year, which was so helpful in my recovery. It was paramount. And I thought, well, okay, I'm walking to this church and I have dogs. And whenever I've traveled for assignments, I've always hired dog walkers, dog sitters, or doggy daycare. And so I thought, well, let me go knock on my neighbors' doors, eat some humble pie, and see if I can walk their dogs while they're at work and pick up their dog poop. And I would do that for $20 a walk.
Wow.
And so that's how I started I lived in a townhome community. So until I lost my home, I had a little bit of time left. So I started walking my neighbor's dogs. And then they were like, can you daycare? And I'm like, no, because I'm losing my home. And where am I going to daycare them? I don't even know where I'm going to live. And I'm like, should I start looking under bridges? I don't have money to get a place. I was pretty ostracized by friends. And I don't blame them. They had to protect themselves and kind of back away, because they didn't know who I was becoming, what I would be.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, okay, Beth, well, you've been on your own before. You got to do this again. But one of my dog walking clients God bless her sweet soul. She was like, I've got this empty, dilapidated, disgusting warehouse. If you want to go and renovate it, you can have it for a really low amount of money to start your doggy daycare. And I was
Wow.
like, and I walked her dogs every day. And I'm like, wow, thank you. Talk about people will help themselves. People will help others who help themselves.
Right.
And Carla, I couldn't afford a contractor, and I don't know how to build things, but I tell you what, YouTube, and I learned. So I rolled up my sleeves and I emptied out this old dilapidated place, and I renovated it and painted it and started doggy daycare. And then it turned into boarding and then grooming. And then it became a really full-fledged business over 3 years. And kind of towards the end of 3 years, it's very labor intensive. We had 40 to 60 dogs any given day.
Mm-hmm.
And we also did walks and things. So it was very, very overwhelming and physically. Hi, baby. Hi.
She says,
You know
Mama,
what?
you woke me up during my nap.
What's your name?
Oh, see, look, he's there. Mimi.
And this
Mimi.
is Mendel.
Oh, you might have a boyfriend.
This is Mendel. Who's that?
Mimi. This is Mimi.
Hi, Mimi.
Mimi.
Oh, come on
Yeah.
now. As if on cue, Carla.
I
Kiss
know.
the mommy.
So when I got her, first time I saw her, she was 3 weeks old, and I was with my mom was terminally ill at the time. And the dog we went to see was going to be too big for where we were living. And the breeder said, but I've got another little one because your mom is so sick, and brought her out. And she looked like a mouse, and she was in my hand. That's the first, I said, do you want to come home with me? And she kissed me just like she did at the same side. And she does it every night and every morning. Yeah. So
Beats to my heart.
I know.
And mine is
Yeah.
pushing my hand now, like, oh, you're not done petting me, mommy.
I know that's what she was doing too. And I did that so she wouldn't bark while we were on. But I know you're dog lovers. So I thought, well, I'll show her. I call her my director of woofography, napping and treats.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Okay, that's hilarious. Yes.
Oh, and yours is what's the name of yours again?
So his name is Mendel. He's a rescue,
Mendel.
and he came with that name. And friends at first were like, you've got to change his name. What's a Mendel? And I'm like, no, think about it. Mendel McDonough. That's kind of cute.
It is
So,
cute.
yeah, so he's going to keep his little awkward name, and he's the Mendel. He's grown into his Mendelness,
Oh, I love that. I love that you have him too. Yes.
He's wonderful. He's, I don't know who's saved who. You've heard that before, right?
Well,
I don't know who's saved who and all this.
And even though we got her from a breeder, she was the same thing. She saved with my mom and dad. She laid by them the whole time. I mean, she was like a caregiver, and and she went through the whole loss of them too. And but has been my little buddy. So
I love that. And so speaking of that, so I was really tired with the doggy daycare, and I was ready for another challenge because, like, okay, I amazingly, who knew, I turned this into a very viable and profitable business, and so people started approaching me to buy it. And at first, I was like, "Gosh, no! What am I going to do with my life? I can't get back to TV." I tried that route, and I got a hard no everywhere I turned, which I understand. And so just more people kept approaching me, and I'm, and then, an offer that was interesting enough came along that I was like, maybe I will take this, with no idea what I would do afterwards, but just financially and emotionally and kind of physically, the time was right after 3 years. And so the day that I was handing the keys over to doggy daycare, KSTP called me out of the blue. And they said, we have this investigative producer job. Would you be interested in it? But they had some stipulations for me to go to AA to check in, show proof of some things. Understandable, because they were going to be taking a risk on me.
Wow.
But the good thing about so many good things for me and my tenure at KSTP, the Hubbards are very big proponents of recovery.
Yeah.
I don't know where that comes from, but they are. They've got a long history of hiring people and giving them a second chance. And they did that with me, which I'm eternally grateful for. And I was like, you bet, to get back into the field I love more than anything. And I don't need to be on camera, you know. I've been famous and infamous, and I don't know which is better. So I'm fine behind the scenes.
I am
And
too. Yeah.
I'm fine, you know.
Mhm.
I done TV enough that I didn't need the glare of the lens and the camera. But I did like the storytelling always. And of course we write our own stuff, right? So I do like the storytelling part of it. And just as things happened, you know, breaking news would happen, and there weren't always reporters in the newsroom because they're off on their own assignments. And, you know, breaking news happened one day, and the bosses looked at me and they were like, you know, out the door. And I'm like, okay, here we go. And I even thought in my head at the time, like, do I want this? Am I ready for this? Is the public ready for this? Like, what kind of backlash am I going to get?
Right.
And there's a little bit of backlash, but I addressed it quickly. People would email like, you know, what are you doing driving out on the highway? And I'm like, well, I've had my license back for years now, so I'm as legal to drive as you are.
Right.
And, you know, so I would call those people and have that conversation with them, because I'm like, no, I want them to know I have changed. And we don't need to keep picking at me. I have changed, and I prove it every single day. I show up sober, I work a program, and I believe in recovery and sobriety to my core. And yeah, that just, and then things just kind of took off from there. You know, who would have known? You know, I had to think about this a little bit. The second half of my career at KSTP, and I had a good first half, and I loved what I did, but the second half of my career with KSTP, to me, was exponentially better. And I've asked myself why. I was sober.
Yeah, I was just going to say you were sober. How long have you been
I was
sober now?
sober 16 years.
Oh, Beth, that's amazing.
Uh-huh.
Congratulations. You are that person who sat in that meeting.
I am, and I can't even believe that I'm saying that to you. 16 years. And the gentleman that told me, he had 17 years at the time, he was kind of a grandpa age. So he kind of took me under his wing a little bit, you know. And he was not my sponsor. I had a very good sponsor, a female sponsor, but he would just sit next to me at the meeting, always hand me Kleenex, because I was crying a lot back in those days.
I bet you were.
And just shared and imparted his knowledge of the disease and recovery and what worked and what didn't. And, you know, also at the time, shocker, I was going through a breakup. My boyfriend at the time had never drank either. And he just did not understand all of this. And he certainly didn't want to be a part of it. Again, understandable, because I caused a lot of collateral damage. So I'm coming to a meeting one day, and I'm telling the gentleman next to me, you know, he's like, you look like you had a bad night. And I'm like, oh, I did. You know, I about lost the last person that was on my side. And he said, how do you feel? And I said, I feel terrible. And he goes, good. Don't ever forget that feeling.
Oh,
It should feel
wow.
terrible to hurt other people. And that stuck with me. And I
Wow.
thought, yeah, he's right. You know, he's right. Yeah, it's time to clean up the mess and all the collateral damage.
Interesting. One thing I've never shared, even in private with very many people, but through my younger days of dating,
Mhm.
I didn't have alcoholism in my family, in my direct family. So I didn't understand it, but I seemed to be attracted to men who were alcoholics. And then most of
Really?
them since, if they're alive, got help and then came back and did their amends with me later in life. And I'm
Yes.
friends with a lot of them today, just friends. Some men, most of
Right.
them have gone on to be married, but yes, and I have no idea what that is because my parents weren't big drinkers or it's just not in my family.
Yeah. I mean, good for you, right? Because
Yeah,
you don't need
right.
that problem. Life is hard enough as
It
is.
is. It's messy and icky and yeah, so then after you left, KSTP, then what you did you go straight to Utah from there or no?
I did. So, you know, as I shared with you earlier about getting shot and the riots and then having my life threatened again. And I thought, you know, I've not been in TV news this long for this to be how my life is going to end. And
Yeah. Or to start drinking
and the
again.
stage, yeah, you know, and it could be enough to lead someone back to drinking, but I was not going to do that. And my health was just, whew, I was becoming bedridden, and which is also part of Lyme disease for a lot of people. And so I knew I was going to spend the next 6 months in and out of bed, in and out of the hospital. Doctors, I went all over the US. I've had so my 24 different types of very invasive treatments. I can tell you that. You know, I've done brain rehab, I've done the hyperbaric chamber, I've had heart surgery 3 times now.
Wow.
You know, oh, yeah. The infection ate through all the material in my neck, so I had to get my neck fused. I had to have some things removed here. I
You'd
would have.
never know it. You look so healthy and so, just like Rusty said, just happy, healthy, and strong.
Oh, thank you. It has. So I really knew, like, I've got to go. I need to step away and just heal. I have no idea what the rest of my life will look like. I don't even know if I get the rest of my life now, because just the medical problems were adding up very quickly. And so
Mhm.
it was December, and then it became January, and that's when COVID was starting to happen. Minnesota's getting locked down, and 2 blizzards happened in 1 week. Right?
I remember.
I'm bedridden, can't go anywhere. I can go to the doctor, the grocery store, and the gas station, and that's it. And I'm like, no, as sick as I am, no, this is not going to be how I spend this next year. And I knew that there was a really good clinic here that specializes in Lyme disease. I had vacationed here quite a bit because there's
Mm.
red mountains, and you know, it's beautiful, and it's a very healing place. It's close to Zion and Bryce.
Yeah.
And I always, you know, whenever I would take long weekends off or to decompress and get away from work, I would come here. And I thought, you know, if I get a shot to live in St. George, I'm going to take it. So when the 2 blizzards hit, I'm like, I'm out of here. Like I loaded up my yoga clothes in the car, loaded up the dogs, called the realtor, said, put the house on the market. And I drove here to heal, really. And so I came here with that emphasis to tackle the Lyme disease, and there are many more procedures and blood transfusions and dialysis, and you know, and so now I have many more good days than I do bad days, which
Good.
is major progress for me. And I'm up and I'm out of bed and stepping away from the stress of news too. You're a female, so you'll appreciate this. I lost a bunch of weight. That's great. I
Yes.
gained a bunch at the highest. I was on 40 different pills, medications, and supplements. And so I had, you know, gained some weight because of all of that, and can't exercise. And it's not that you don't want to exercise, you physically can't with Lyme.
Right.
It will make you very ill. Yeah. So I came here and I'm like, okay, mission now is, Beth McDonough, see if you can get as much of your health back as you can. And then we'll figure out the rest from there, you know. But, you know, there were a couple of times even here that, you know, I had blood clots, I had emergency surgery, and like, where does all this come from? You know, I was pretty healthy before this.
Mhm.
But, you know, there were a couple of times that it was pretty dicey, and I pulled through. And so through all of this, Carla, when I started writing the book, I was on house arrest back in 2009. And, you know, I've started, stopped whenever I can face myself on my computer screen too. And then I go through all of this health stuff too. And I thought, you know, I just can't go through all of these experiences and there not be a takeaway for other people. Because if I'm going through this, other people are. And let me kind of put together a roadmap of what's worked for me, whether it's, you know, health or sobriety. And it can be a roadmap for other people to follow. And so I just really try to be inspiration in action in that
Well,
area.
and to finish your story in a way, because publicly, when people were humiliating you when you're at your lowest, what a great way. What do they say? The best revenge is success. And now you get to share that.
I mean, this platform has blown my mind. I had trepidations about going public, with the book, because I thought, okay, we have thick skins though, from being in the media.
Yes, we
And I
do.
had some trepidations, like, I don't know how this will be received, but we'll baby step it and see how it goes. And I would say the majority of it has been very positive and supportive. And I attribute that to I have just owned my behavior, that, people didn't do this to me. I did it to them. I've worked for my recovery. I put in the work for my recovery, and I continue to do that. I work with alcoholics even to this day. And I still go to meetings and I counsel people. So, and for me, accountability is everything. When I was still living in Minnesota, a lot of people knew me. So when I would go out to maybe Lord Fletcher's or to a restaurant, all of my friends also made sure that I didn't drink, but it wasn't that someone got their drinks mixed up. My friends were
Right.
very guarded, and they helped me out. The waiters, the waitresses knew. I just let everybody know I don't drink. You live your life. But
Mhm.
my system is hardwired differently, so I don't drink, and it's just not an option for me, because when you throw an atomic bomb into your own life, there's nobody to blame but you. And so it's up to you to clean up your mess.
Well, that right there, that statement shows that you're in recovery, and you've accepted and you're moving through it and you're continuing to work the program every day. And that's just congrats. When you
Oh,
said 16
thank you.
years, it gave me chills.
Oh,
Yeah.
I, I sometimes I can't believe it. And I'm grateful. And I know that word is used a lot, but there's a
Yes.
reason for it. It's an important word and it matters. And I've had to fight so hard these last 4.5 years to get my health back.
Mhm.
And again, I have many more good days than bad ones now. But it's Lyme disease. There's not a cure. I have relapses, but also the journey through alcoholism, having to fight through that disease. I'm like, okay, I've had cancer twice, and I'm like, okay, I'm listen, I've had so many lives. I'm exhausted by myself, but
Wow. And
I'm
you
like,
look
okay,
amazing.
thank you. It's clean living. It's stepping away from stress. And I
Yeah.
really have to manage that now, because the relapses will come, or the
Mhm.
flare-ups. I'm sorry, the flare-ups will come if I get too much stress. And in fact, I can start to feel it, like my skin will burn. And I'm like, oh no, I'm going to be down for like 4 weeks or,
Oh,
so I really manage that. And clean living, the desert lifestyle is just, it's magical here. Is
Utah's beautiful. I've flown through there and I have friends that live there. I have a former boss from CBS WCCO TV here I think he's retired now, but he was at a Fox station out there he still lives out there in St. George, Utah.
Oh, he does.
I see,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
and his pictures like yours, it's just like, oh.
It's
Yeah.
it's like Sedona to the nth degree, and just red mountains and hiking, and
Mm,
the people here are wonderful. I kind of call it a little St. George bubble.
yeah.
What happens in the rest of the world doesn't necessarily happen here. And when I moved here, I was a little leery, like, how are people going to receive someone who's been in the media here? Because it's just not an overly media savvy city,
Right,
because they haven't had to be. It was a small town for a long time until the last couple of years, and now it's a
right,
city.
right.
But people here, they don't care the mistakes you've made in your life. They don't care what your previous life was or who you were or what you are. They do care you're a good person. They'll
Yeah.
help you if you ask. They don't get in your business, but there's a huge, huge recovery community here too. It's very healing. People will come here to heal. You go out to the
Mhm.
mountains to hike, and then you go to therapy or a meeting or whatever means you use to maintain your sobriety. It's very healing and supportive out here.
I love that.
Um, yeah. And I think, also being this is a city now, but it's not a major city. So we don't have a lot of some of the issues and the traffic and the
Mm.
stressors that we did back in the Twin Cities or other large cities where I've lived. And my neighbors, they know my story, they support me. And that's just incredibly helpful in and of itself.
Absolutely. Well, and you're coming back for Sober October. You'll be here for an author reading and question Q&A on October 11th from 1 to 3. It's in above this video. There's a whole list of how to contact you and everything, but 1 to 3
Okay.
p.m. at Barnes and Noble in Edina. And so everything that I'm sharing is above there, as well as your little bit of your bio and then how to contact you, like the promo that I did. But for those of you who might be watching, okay, yes, she's going to do the Q&A. What other do you do public speaking? Maybe share some of what you might be available for hire.
Yes. Oh, thank you for asking that. So I'm just starting to get into the speaking circuit. I honestly didn't know if I would do that or not. But a couple of opportunities have come to me. And when they were presented, I was like, oh, this is a great new avenue to keep up the good fight, if you will. So one of them being the Indiana Court Services reached out to me after seeing some of these promos that we've been running for my book on social media. Totally reached out to me out of the blue. And so I guess the state gets together judges, prosecutors, defense attorneys, and probation officers for an annual gathering. And she said, I think you would be a wonderful person to come here and speak because you've seen both sides of this now. And I said, boy, have I, I've asked a lot of hard questions now. I got to answer them. She said, in our business, we see people who can't get on the straight and narrow. And so they start to lose hope and they get a little, frustrated. And she goes, so we want you to come talk to show that people can transform and turn their lives around. And I said, I would just be so honored. Absolutely. And I said, and I also want to point out my judge, back in the day, I told you the prosecutor wanted me to go to prison for 90 days and to send the message. And I was horrified, of course. Wow. And the judge, he's listening to all of this in the court. And he said, Miss McDonough, I'd like to see you privately in chambers. And I thought, oh, bad day's about to get a bunch worse, And so I walk around, I go into his chambers, and there he is. And he doesn't mind if I use his name, Judge Gary Larson. He's standing there with his arms out like this, like a proud dad. And he says, come here, let me give you a hug, kid. And he goes, I saw your name show up on my docket. And he said, I've been following your case ever since because I knew you were going to come in here. And he said, I want you to know you will get through this. It's unpleasant. You'll get through it. The best of your life will be ahead of you. And that day was his 20-year anniversary. Before my court hearing, he had gone to a meeting to get his 20-year chip.
Oh, that brings tears to my eyes. What a God moment, universe moment to have him as your judge.
I mean,
That's what people need is love. They don't need to be put in jail. What was that going to do?
And he said, you'll have some punishments. And I had a couple of weekends in the county jail and a weekend at the workhouse. And then I was on house arrest. He said, you'll have some punishment. I'm not going to send you to prison. But he said, I ask you when the day comes, you pay it forward. So that's what I'm doing. I'm living up to the word that I kept to him because, and this makes my eyes water.
Me too.
My life was pretty hard for a number of months. Very, very, very hard. And he's the first person that showed me any mercy and compassion. And he, by all accounts, should have been the last person to show me mercy and compassion. Yeah. But he was a human in that moment. And he saw beyond the headlines and he saw the humanity in me.
Yes. And your potential.
And I think I'd done a number of things to already start to get sober before I went to court. Not for the court's sake, but for my sake, because it was time, it was time to get the help. And so, I shared with the Indiana court system, I'd be happy to come talk. And I have very good experiences that show this judge was a very important part of turning my life around. And so the work they do is very important. So, as a result of that, I'm like, maybe I will do this. And I've since been contacted by some other agencies that I'm going to go speak with them as well. And I just feel like I really I'm a firm believer that when you put transformation doesn't come overnight,
No.
but the cost of transformation is, for me, I had to lose everything. Not everybody has to. Everybody has their different bottoms or the lines that they don't want to cross.
Right.
But the cost of transformation is this. And when you put in the work, when you believe and you help others, that good things come out of it.
Well, I don't know if you can see the comments, but a favorite media person who's been good to me wrote, Brad Satin. Thanks for sharing, Beth. Your willingness to share will help others. And he did a heart.
Oh, Brad Satin, such a sweetheart. I love him dearly, and he knows that. He and I, gosh, we've crossed paths so many times. I worked in Philadelphia, and he worked in Philadelphia.
Yep.
So we've known each other since our Philly days. And then, when I did get the job at KSTP, I went up to Brad, and I'm like, "Were you part of that?" He wouldn't acknowledge, he wouldn't deny, but I'm guessing, he maybe got in somebody's ear.
He
Because I
is good
actually,
about that. He is very good at supporting
oh,
others. Yep.
yeah. And I actually kept his dog at doggy daycare.
Oh, I bet you did. I bet.
You know?
If I had known, you would have had Mimi too, but I
Oh,
didn't know that you had that at the time. And I'm just, just an impressive story. Um, I know that I've jumped around a little bit, but what else haven't we, covered or talked about? Did we allow you to finish the end of the book? I know we don't want to tell too much because we want people to
right.
read it. Yes.
So there are, throughout the book, it's kind of, I take people along. It's the adrenaline of the newsroom and what we cover. And then it's also, kind of the chaos of my public fall. And it's a hard start. And I take people behind the scenes because I feel like sometimes people don't want to, and listen, I get it, broadcast their failures because it stings. I'm
Right.
grounded enough in my sobriety now. And how am I going to get rid of the shame and the stigma if I don't just face it head on? So I've kind of been able to overcome the shame and the stigma. And now I thought there's got to be takeaway that I share with other people in all of this.
Mhm.
And I just want people to know that your worst moments is bad. And because when you're at rock bottom, it just feels like there's no out, and we've all
Mhm.
prayed for death in the middle of the night that we don't wake up, because it's that bad.
Mhm.
But I want people to know, as bad as their situation is, whether it's addiction, Carla, regret, bad choices, they need to reinvent
Mhm.
themselves, troubled marriages. We all make bad decisions that if we could go back, we'd change some things. And if
Absolutely.
you've ever exploded your life, you can piece your life back together, and it can be done. And that's where I think I'm sitting here as living proof,
Mhm.
that
Yeah,
this is what it
absolutely.
looks like. And my life is exponentially better now than it was back in the day. And to ever think like, and I'm sure you've heard this, when people look at their behavior when they're drinking, I'm like, who was that? I don't,
Well,
who
and
was that?
I don't mean to be this doesn't I don't want this to sound condescending, but I'm proud of you, Beth.
Oh no, thank you. It's not condescending at all. I'll take that all day long. All
Yeah.
day long.
So proud of you.
And I just want people to know that, you know, um, losing everything is where the rebuild begins.
Right. Well, and
And
look what you've
I
done.
was just going to say, people are more open to messy stories in this day and age. Even 20 years ago, we kind of kept things under wraps, but people are just more open to messy stories, and people will help people who help themselves. And
Mhm.
this is very important too. Being in the media, we're strong. We don't like to ask for help. Help is a dirty
Right.
word to us. We're going to go do it ourselves. It was really eye opening for me that when you ask for help, that it didn't feel like weakness. It felt like strength, and it amplified the amount of help, the resources, and the support I
Mhm.
got, which is what made a huge difference in my journey.
Well, and probably before or likely before people knew about your drinking problem, I'm sure because you're a strong woman, I get this a lot as well. They just assume you don't need any help. she's strong and independent. But then I'm just thankful that as it came to the public eye, that there were people that were willing to help you. Because
Yes.
that's everyone's, some people just don't want to get involved and they want to remove themselves. And that's, like you said, that's okay too. But
Yeah,
we all
that's
need,
okay too.
we all need to be loved. Everyone wants love and to be loved, to give love
Yeah.
and to receive it.
And I hope, I had hidden my disease for so long, but the secrets only stay silent for a
Mhm.
while. They're always, what we all know is these things always come to the surface. I also hope that by me coming out, and in the book, I share a number of stories that have never been made public before. And a number of them I'm not proud of. They're yucky and they're ugly. And I share all of it. I bear all of it because I don't want to hide anymore. And it's very liberating.
Mhm.
So what I encourage people is by me coming out, showing that I've worked past the stigma and that I'm not hiding behind a bottle anymore, that it will encourage them to also face their truths,
Mhm.
because it's community. And then these meetings, the people in the meetings become your community, your aftercare groups, they become social safety nets, the help, the resources, and the people who are going to love you back to health. That matters.
It does matter. Wow. Thank you, Beth, for being so willing to share this. I shared with you off air, and it is public knowledge. I lost my former co-host to alcoholism, and a lot of people know that, but it wasn't made public because of the shame and the stigma attached to it. Where I had
Mhm.
been on the journey with him and tried to get him help for years, he in fact, to the point that when he did pass away from alcoholism, I had survivor's guilt. And when I was moving 2 years ago, and even prior to that, I would wake up in the middle of the night and think, did I do everything? Could I have saved him? And then I found a huge banker's box. Let me just get my hands here. That was just full of, all these things I had done that I had tried and over and over again. And that's when I threw it away. I thought, when I throw this away, I have to throw away the guilt because I
Yes.
did. And, and that, was a big step for me on the other side of it too. So that's probably also one of the reasons when you said 16 years, you're alive and people don't
Yes.
realize this disease does kill just like cancer.
Oh my
And
gosh. I've 4 people so far have died this year that, I've been close to,
I'm
and from alcoholism and alcohol complications. And, that's something else to mention, that there was a new study that I just came across. The US Surgeon General has reported that since 2000, that there's a 255% increase in alcohol deaths
wow.
of women 25 to 34. I mean,
Wow.
it's people die from this.
Right.
And even when I was still living in Edina, there was 2 of my neighbors died from it. And you would think, is it enough to wake us up? I hope, and I know that now people are reporting studies that alcohol consumption is at an all-time low. Yay,
Right.
but people are going to live their lives. They're going to do what they're do, and it's their call to make.
Right.
Um,
It
but
sounds
people,
like they've transferred though into CBD stuff.
uh,
That's what I'm
mhm,
hearing. Someone did say that your message is giving hope, that they can have a second chance at life and remembering you're never, above going through this, and that's so true that,
yeah,
they think, here's a media icon, a legend in the business here in town that, you'd still be working if you wanted to because of that, and look what happened. You weren't above it. Yeah.
nobody's above it. It is such an equal opportunity disease, and when you go to rehab facilities or you go to meetings, look around and you're like, my judge had a problem. Doctors, teachers, moms, dads, yeah. So it can affect anyone. No one is immune from it.
Right.
Um, and that doesn't have to be the final word. The sobriety and the recovery can be the final word.
Do you happen to have a book right by you that you could hold up or no?
I don't, but I could.
Yeah.
I'll try and do it gently.
Yes, there we go.
That's the cover of my book.
Thank you.
Um, and I
Yes,
know it's a little shocking, but that's also the point. It's,
absolutely.
the two sides of an alcoholic, in this case, the two sides of Beth. And, when my mugshot, and that's my first mugshot, there's a second one out there.
Mhm.
But when my first mugshot kind of made the rounds, and it actually made the rounds to my family before I could ever tell them in other states. You look at that and I'm like,
Mhm.
who is she? Who was she? But
Right.
that's why I really wanted to. This is the two sides of alcoholism, and people can work their way to the recovery side.
I love that. It's been fun because I've been in this business a long time, and I've been doing the live streams since 2017. This is the longest show I've ever had, but that's because you've got a great story that deserved to be told, but we've had and have so many people online. So clearly you're resonating. Your story is resonating with
Oh,
people. So
that
thank you.
warms my that warms my heart to no end. And thank you for the opportunity. You didn't have to have me on, and you opted to, and you've been very gracious and wonderful, and you're a very good interviewer. For the record, Caroline Lowe told me you're a very good interviewer. She's right.
Oh, thank you, Caroline. 2 of
Yeah.
the people that I admired growing up and well, we're the same age, but, I just always admired you both and just really, wow, that's probably thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I try to just be be who I am, and I enjoy, both of you have been icons in this business. You have an incredible story that needed to be shared, and I'm not just saying this. I was so happy that we did connect on social media. Well, we've been connected, but that we kind of were forced into connection again because I literally have a list of people I want on my show, and you were at the top of the list.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I
Thank
just
you.
hadn't had a chance to reach out to you, and I was booked through November, and then I had that last minute cancellation. So I'm like, "Hey." So thank you
Yeah,
for
I'll take
being
it.
willing. Yeah, no, I was so grateful because I don't usually get cancellations, and I wanted to share the story, and the timing of it was so perfect. So I really appreciate. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you wanted to make sure we did before we close out the show?
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot of ground, right? And
We
I
have.
just want other people watching this to clearly know, and apparently we've got an audience, that they are not alone.
Mhm.
And, the outside doesn't always match the inside. People have invisible struggles that you don't know about. And people who extend a hand to someone else, everyone benefits. They benefit, everybody benefits. And so I'm just really campaigning to get as many people to come over to like the 10% side so we can make it 10, 20, 30, 40. And recovery can happen. And I understand that and it's not linear. I want to point that
Mhm.
out. You don't come out of treatment like, oh, I'll never have a drink again. And that's the goal. But sometimes people relapse. Well, that doesn't have to be the end all. If you
Mhm.
have a relapse, you just start again. You take the little baby steps every day and work your way back into it. But it's never final. There's never a final word with this. Every day is a chance to wake up, to course correct.
Well, that's grief. That's life. That's anything.
Yes.
But we think that and the mentality is okay, they drank. And that's what I thought with my former co-host is, oh, he told me he's in recovery. I didn't know that people relapse or some say they are and they're not. And um, so I mean, I have learned a lot, which is probably, and I think I shared this with you, but I haven't shared this publicly. I went to Al-Anon and I get the Hazelden emails every day, the gifts. And that's the first
Uh-huh.
thing I do in the morning when I turn on my computer is read that because even though I've not been an alcoholic, I've been around it. And I think all those messages can help anybody for life. They give you hope and inspiration. And it's not just about alcoholism.
Absolutely. And one of those quotes, because I opened the same email too, one of those quotes is really just my mantra right now. And it's, you grow from what you go through. And I'm
Yes,
like,
you do.
there you go, and I made a pledge to the judge to pay it forward. And so that's what I've got to do.
That is fantastic. Well, I so appreciate you coming on and sharing this. And as your story evolves, I'll have you back. It would be great.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, anytime you want. I have a feeling there might be a second book down the road.
There
So
is, it's already in the works.
we'll
So
see.
I'll give you a quick teaser. So the first
Please.
book, Stand By, is about my fall. Still Standing is about the comeback, like the doggy daycare and all the things that happened, and covering some stories, the Jayme Closs, the Jacob Wetterling, Prince's death. Yeah, Still Standing will detail my comeback, and that's coming out in 2026, probably at the end of 2026.
Oh, great. Well, we'll have you back on then once it does. Yes.
Carla,
And
thank you.
oh, thank you. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We still have a strong presence online. That's a long time. They say the adult attention span is 40 minutes, and I don't even think it's really that long. So I really, really appreciate you all tuning in. We could not be the Twin Cities longest airing community showcase without your support and without great stories to share and hope and inspiration. Please tune in next Tuesday evening, 7 p.m. Central Time. We've got a good lineup. Many of you know I started a new role as regional vice president at Streams, and I'm going to have another coworker and my boss on. We're going to talk cars, and
Oh, really?
yeah, so car talk with Carla will happen next week,
Oh my
and
gosh, that's so fun.
yeah, we're going to pivot a little bit. So that is one of my passions. So my new role is just perfect for me. So I appreciate you all tuning in. Tune in next, or actually, it's not Tuesday, Wednesday evening, 7 p.m. Central Time. And again, thank you, Beth, for sharing your story. Please go see her October 11th from 1 to 3 at Barnes and Noble in Edina. Reach out to her. Above this video is all of the information of ways you can reach out to her: social media, email. I did not put your phone number on there.
Oh, thanks.
For a good time.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
right. Woo.
Oh, goodness. But,
Well,
thank you
Carla,
again.
and yes, this has been a wonderful safe space, and you are just so open. And thank you. And I am sorry that you lost your former co-host. It's an equal opportunity disease, man.
It is, it is, and, I think of him, one of the most talented people in our business. So I miss him every day. I miss his talent, and I honor him once a year around his birthday and the anniversary of his passing, just because I want his legacy to carry on, and I want people to, and the reason I'm willing to share it is there isn't shame in the disease, and I want you all to know that there is hope, and Beth just, is the example of that.
Oh, thank you, Carla. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And we will see you all hopefully next week, Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. Central Time, right here on Around Town TV. We'll see you then. Bye bye.